Comedy LOL Podcast Network.
Like the red pill scene, like sending that to my friends that are like on the or asking questions. I'm like, here. So what I was gonna say was, oh man, did I totally forget what I was gonna say? It's quite possible. Oh, getting out people.
I said I was being verbally crucified.
Yeah.
And that I'm in a state of mind that's better than the people that have been stuck inside.
Yeah, I think that's really important is to get out. But I forgot what I was gonna say. It'll come back to me though. You know what it is? I realized something. I have a superpower, and it's that I can forget things, but I have automatic recall. But the only way it works is if I try not to remember it. I got to go on to something else, and then it'll pop up to distract me. You know, It's like a so that's great. I've used it, trying to use it to my advantage. But I have a quote here. So let's start with this quote, and then we can get our show started. The quote today is here we go. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in the democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. And that quote is by Edward Bernays.
All right, so I normally start off talking about my thoughts on the quote. You go first, and then I'll jump in.
Yeah, all right. Well, Edward Bernays, he was related to Sigmund Freud. I believe it was his nephew. I believe that's what it was. I've heard that a few times. And so he was really, though, he was more deep into psychology, and he was pretty much known as like the godfather of advertising in his country because of he was the one who, he wrote this book. Forgive me, I can't remember the name of it right now. It'll come back to me. But anyway, he wrote this book, and it was very monumental in that because it was all about psychology. It was all about groupthink and how to sway the masses and how to change opinion and how to insert opinion and all this stuff. And it's really amazing. And the reason I wanted to use the quote was because that I feel anytime there's a bunch of people on one side, an argument or another, and they're ready to like scream at each other, I feel like it's important to bring this up because sometimes people don't know why they have or they think they have this opinion, but it's something that they might have heard on the news. So I think it's always important to step back and kind of look at your opinion and question it. So I feel bringing a quote like this to light just lets people know that there are people in high places that think of these things and they do try to sway public opinion. And so, I constantly question myself, is this right? What am I thinking? What am I doing? Where did this come from? Does this hold up? Am I just thinking this because other people do? So I feel like I'm going to use my example to just show other people that maybe they can discern for themselves a little bit, or if they feel like they're hearing an opinion and they're getting very frustrated in what's going on in the world, that, hey, there's other people and, maybe it's happening on purpose. So you could just kind of take a deep breath and remember that, eat that strawberry. We're all here to have a good time and enjoy ourselves and to learn. So no matter how stressed out and crazy it's getting, it's always good to take a step back. What about you? What did you think of this quote?
Well, just going off of what you said, I think it's important to realize that there are some people that do like, and I'm using this phrase loosely or this term loosely. There's people that do like being manipulated or being told what to think or what to do. And those people kind of, I think there's a sense of security there of they don't really have to think of anything then, or it's just like, I'm going to believe what I'm told. And I think there's a certain type of person that says, well, no, I'm going to hear what you're saying, but I'm going to question it and try and figure it out for myself. Reading through this quote, it kind of reminded me of some of the schooling I went to because I went to Catholic schooling my whole life. Catholic elementary school, Catholic high school, Catholic university, and then even my grad school was religiously affiliated. And, you have to take religion classes, and they tell you all of these things about about Christianity and like the way that you're supposed to live. And it's like, I mean, some of them I can adhere to, right? You know, do not kill. In my head, I was like, I wasn't even thinking about that, but I wasn't even thinking about doing that. But there's other things where they tell you, like, contemporary moral issue wise, where it's like, well, we believe this. It's like, wait, why do we believe this? And you're using a collective we, but it really should be a you. You believe that, and I'm going to figure out what I believe, but it's not going to be part of this collective we. And if it is, it's going to be my choice to be part of that based on what I know or what I've found out. So I think it's really interesting because, you know, I think it applies not just to like government, you know, but it could apply to religion or even like familial things, you know, what you're brought up with and how your family kind of teaches you different aspects of life. And you just don't question it, you just do it. I think living out in California, I've definitely seen there's like a New England way of thinking that I have, that might just be associated with my family, but it's just because I grew up there. And I have these stigmas about people from other parts of the country, but it's because I wasn't living there. I'm sorry, I've gone off on a tangent. But I feel like that's just in relation to what you were saying. I like this quote because I feel like it makes you think. It makes you really question any bit of information that you get. And that is something that I feel like we should all be doing. There are some things I think that are inherent facts, but a lot of things are not facts. They're just presented that way. And you look around and you see people just kind of feeding into this and being like, yeah, that's what I heard. And it's like, well, just because you heard it doesn't mean that's what we have to do. And I don't know why, besides that, I think, again, like I think about some people, I think there's a sense of security there of being like, well, I'm okay being controlled and being told what to do, because then I don't have to do it. And it's like, how hard is it to think? I don't know.
Yeah, well, people that do that, unfortunately, are just trying to pass off their own personal responsibility onto somebody else. And I don't blame them. It's because it's the way that we are. It's the way the society creates humans. We're always taught from a young age to look externally for our validation, to not look within. The voice within is the devil. Don't listen to that voice. You know, whatever you do, you got to listen to what everyone else tells you. That's the right thing. And if not, then shame on you. And I think that what happens is it creates a nation of long children, they call them long children. Like, so really like 40, 50, 60-year-old children, they have gray hair, but they never became adults because they never took their personal responsibility. And it's, you know, I was one of these people until I figured it out and took responsibility and had to look at my actions honestly and heal some behaviors that I had. And I feel that if other people did this, then the world would be a much better place. I just recorded a solo podcast. It was like 30 minutes long on this whole topic. So I'll leave it for that. If you're listening to this, go check it out. It's on the Brandon Bonanza. It'll be on there. But what I wanted to say also to bring it back to this quote is that you have that whole perspective of looking at it from New England because it's the Puritanistic way of looking at things, because we were basically, you know, the Puritans were here and we're raised out of that. It's that whole New England mentality. If you got to work, you got to be hard working. You're worthless. What are you, just lazy? And, you know, and I think it's great because we can bring that to this card, because we're talking today about the Three of Wands. And if you look far out in the distance, there's sailboats, there's ships out there that could be like the Puritans sailing into this new place. So, you know, I guess. Hi, Ashley. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I feel like this week it's dragged on. And so for all of our listeners who have been on this career journey here with me about not having a job, I was brought back to my job temporarily, potentially. So this was my first, like, it technically wasn't my first full-time week, but the work has started kind of piling up and it's just been a lot. And I'm like already like over it. So I'm very excited it's the weekend, and I'm very excited to be recording today and to not have to be sitting creating formulas and budgets all day. How are you doing?
Oh, I am just doing lovely. I think that right now this is just such a crazy time with everything that's happening. and that everything that's happening, we're too close to it for people to even register it. So I'm just one of these people, I feel that because of the way I look at things and the way I look at history, and I look at things very wide, I'm kind of seeing where it could go and what this means. And it's kind of blowing my mind, but people around me, it's like they just want to get back to the way it was. Let's get back to normal. We had enough of this stuff, which I get, but I don't know, it's weird. But I've been trying to, instead of letting that, that discourage me and get me depressed or whatever, because I'm like, damn, they're not seeing what's happening. I'm actually looking at it in a positive way, because I feel that I'm just happy that I have this perspective on it. And I'm also just very happy that I can allow myself to not be affected. I could just go on living my life, and I've been doing that, and I've just been pretty much ignoring it, because this is how I feel. If there's behavior going around me that I don't approve of, I could either directly say something about it, and I feel that's what I'm doing through like podcasts and videos I'm doing, and then I can also ignore it. Whereas when there's good behavior, I could praise that behavior, So a lot of stuff I've just been ignoring or kind of like laughing at people, So I'm just trying to take it that way instead of letting myself go crazy. So I guess it's been a pretty positive week, I could say.
Do you know what's so interesting about what you just said is that you were saying how people keep saying they want to go back to how things were. And we've talked a lot in this podcast about patterns and history. And it's like, you're not learning anything here. You just want to go back. And it's like this regression back to this naive perspective potentially. And it's like, try and get something here, try and come to some kind of realization, but there's not that,
No, there isn't. And I remembered what I wanted to say at the beginning of the podcast. And what that is don't be discouraged, though. Just like I said, I'm not discouraged, because it doesn't take. So somebody was saying this on a podcast. I can't remember what it was. They were saying, like, you don't have to go next door and convince your neighbor and convince everybody of what we're saying here, right? All we have to do is get a few more people. Like, there's so many more people that know, a few more people, and then you could just kind of tip the way society thinks, and most people will just go along with it, and I feel that's why a lot of people are going along with things right now, even though they might seem a little crazy or foreign to them. They might not want to do it. They're just kind of going along because they just want it to be, they just want to live their lives. And that's the best thing about humans. Most people just want to live their lives and go about their life. And so they'll just do things. If it's easy, fine, I'll just do it. Whatever. All right, can I just go do what I got to do? All right, cool. That's how I feel. But I think if enough people stand up and say, listen, the adults are standing up now. We had enough of this. You had enough fun. And this is how it's going to be. And then just live their life. What could people honestly do? I think that's how real change, positive change, gets affected without anybody getting hurt, because you just kind of turn away from what you don't want to do and do your thing,
Absolutely. And I feel like that even ties into this idea that we were kind of talking about last week of accumulating things and this like materialism of like, turn away from that. You're being told like that's going to make things better, and I see so many people doing this now, like you want to buy a mask. And it's like they've turned this and they're like, well, I'm an entrepreneur. It's like, no, you're playing on people's fears and you're playing on the situation of but being like, and you could do this, but now I'm over it.
Yeah, the thing is, I 100% I'm with you, but you got to remember everything's okay, because that's what they have to do. These, people have to go. That's their karma. That's like the whole concept. That's their karma that they have to work out until they realize what their dharma is, and then they get on their path, and now they're no longer creating karma or working it off. They're on their path, So it's what they have to do that. They have to see, they have to feel that feeling, and later on it works on them, and it's just the way it works. So it's like I try to look at it as like a training program. We're here to train as gods, and if we want to be gods, we got to know what it's like to be the people who we create and we rule. And right now we're the people who we created. So I don't know. It's like a game. It's kind of like that, not exactly, but Anyway, this podcast is about tarot, right? We're talking about tarot.
It is. All right. So let's get into what we're talking about today. Today we are talking about the Three of Wands. So we'll look at the Three of Wands in the Rider-Waite deck. Normally, for this part of the podcast, I describe the card, and then we go into initial thoughts before we go into the different pieces of it, and then talk about how it applies to various types of readings. Okay, so I actually have it physically in my hand today. Normally, I have like a picture on my phone that I'm looking at, or the notes that I've written down, but I kept these out today, both of them.
That's what she said. To all what you just said.
Okay, so I'm looking at the card. I see a bright yellow background, and there's a figure in the center, and they're standing on what looks like kind of a grassy, sandy hill. There's 3 wands, one on the left side that's kind of behind their left shoulder, and one kind of diagonally behind their right shoulder, and then their right hand is holding on to the third staff. They're wearing a red like cloak with like this green cape thing over it, and then there's like this black and yellow sash, and they've got this blue sleeve. It looks like almost like they're having a halo on their head, and we don't see their face because they're facing outward or facing towards the back of the card, and it looks like they're looking out onto an ocean, but the ocean is illuminated yellow because of, I'm guessing, the sun. And then at the far back of the card, we see these like purplish mountains. Now, if you really want to see what the card looks like, take a look at our Instagram at Tarotbull2, TAROTBULL, and the number 2. Brandon posts those every week, so you can actually see what it looks like and get your own thought there. Okay, initial thoughts. What did you think?
That's on Instagram, everybody. Just letting you know. They should know. Initially, I thought this really reminded me of the previous card that we just covered, the Two of Wands. There's a lot in common. And it also looks to me like it's like twilight, like it's the golden hour, or it's just about like the sun's just about to go down. So it gives me the feeling of somebody that's looking over on a day's work well done. He looks kind of like maybe he did some work and he's looking out over everything he has accomplished for the day and he's happy. So that's kind of what I'm seeing right there. Those are the vibes I'm getting. That's what I got originally when I looked at this card. What about you?
Yeah, when I looked at it, I thought of like looking to the future, kind of leaving the past in the past, and turning away from it, moving forward, and looking for something new. But, now that I'm looking at it, it kind of reminds me a little bit of, I believe it's the Moon card that has those like 2 towers there.
Yep.
And he's right in between them.
Yep.
Well, we can get to that in a second. Okay, so let's talk about the different pieces here of the card. Let's start off with that then. The wands themselves. What did you think?
It's like a doorway. It reminds me there's like a precipice he's standing upon, especially because you see that he's up above a little bit. Mm-hmm. So it might not be on the top of a mountain, but he's definitely at least on like a dune, or he's up above things, so he has a clear vision of where he's going. And it looks like he kind of has a choice whether he can either maybe continue through this door or maybe not. It looks like he's peering through to see what he wants to do. So these wands really have that feeling for me. Like I remember when I was a kid, we would walk, and if there was like 2 trees, if we were walking and somebody walked in between them, or there's 2 signposts, somebody walked in between, then we were like, you're in a different dimension if you don't walk this way. Like we'd always say that to each other. So it kind of reminds me of that, where it's like, you're following this way, because if not, you're going to have a different perspective. Because if there's somebody standing on the right of those wands and grasping it with their left hand, they're going to see things in a different manner. Mm-hmm. So that's really what I'm getting from the way the wands are positioned here.
What I initially, when I was looking at it, I was like, oh, it looks like he has kind of like a staff in his hand. But now looking at it, it looks like all of these are kind of firmly planted.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost looks like he's moving away from the one solitary one towards it. For me, it's almost like he's siding with the majority here. Like he's deciding to go along with what everyone else thinks. And maybe that's going to help him on his journey. I don't know.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But I'm looking at it, and the one that he has his hand on, and then the one on the left hand side seem very comparable in size, and the other one maybe because it's closer to the front part of the card, perspective-wise, it doesn't look as big. But I love that they're all very large wands. Like, they're very structured. They're very firmly planted in the ground. Yeah, now that I'm really looking at it, I feel like I'm changing my perspective in terms of it looks like they're making that doorway, and to me it looks like he's gravitating towards what everyone else does. That's like that poem that's like, I came upon two paths and I took the one less traveled. To me it looks like the opposite here. He looks like he's gravitating towards the one that has more plants. Like maybe more people have done that. Or maybe on the flip side, there's more because less people have gone there, so there's more plants that are able to grow.
Yeah, like a path, like a hiking path that nobody really goes. It gets overgrown. Yeah, no, I hear it.
But see, then I'm going back to my original thought. I'm so sorry. I'm like speaking in circles here. Because if you look at the wand on the left, it's planted and there's a green grass, it kind of looks like, or at least a green covering on the ground. And the other two look like they're planted more in sand. And it looks to me then like that maybe that grass has been trampled and then killed. So then there are more people that have walked on that right-hand side than on the left.
Yeah. It also kind of looks like, if you think of it this way, if you have like a right-hand path and a left-hand path, this could signal walking in the middle, but sometimes you have to lean on the right side. Sometimes you have to lean on the left, you know? And sometimes it's okay. It's like that saying when people say everything in moderation, especially moderation. So sometimes you got to go a little overboard one way, and it's okay. You got to remember that, like, you know, that song, lean on me when you're not strong. Yeah. So sometimes you got to lean on that right hand, you know, maybe they're talking about right brain, or maybe it's even left brain because it's his right hand, and that's sometimes you got to lean on that knowledge or that logic.
Okay, let's look at, oh sorry, I just woke up Gizzy. Let's look at the sky. What were your thoughts on that color of the background?
It just reminds me of like we were saying, a sunset. It looks like it's the end of the day, and it looks very calm. So it's very calming. You know, yellow, I always think of like courage. You think of like soldiers because they put out the yellow ribbon and hope and all that stuff. So that's what I'm getting from this. And, you know, the bay is very calm. Everything's really nice. It's all the same color. So it looks like kind of, sometimes when everything is going really well and really nice, it just blends together, as opposed to when you have something that's bad, you know, you get that fear reaction and you just focus on one thing. So right now it's kind of like he's just taking it all in. That's what I'm getting out of it.
Yeah, I'm looking at it and I love that it's like everything is illuminated. And so maybe that is helping this person figure out what path to take or what they should do next, because everything is lit up before them and they can kind of see where they should be going.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel like because now I'm moving into the water, where we see those ships, because the water is that yellow golden color. I think for me, it's like bringing clarity to his emotions or his thoughts and feelings about what he should be doing. There's no confusion there. It's like, I know what I'm supposed to do because it's lit up.
Yeah. And you can also think of it as an alignment between the sky and the ground. I mean, sorry, the water and the sky. So you can think of like air and water. So maybe aligning that right and left hand, that air, which is logic, and the water, which is like emotion.
So let's move on to the figure themselves standing there. What did you think?
It looks like somebody, you know, I was saying before, it kind of looks like somebody who's looking out over and happy, but also to me, it looks like somebody who has a choice to make. It looks like they might have made the choice and now they're, so maybe they're trying to decide if the choice they made was right. Mm-hmm. You know, they're looking out at what they've created, but it really does kind of give that illusion or that image in my mind of like somebody that has to make a choice, but they're really holding on to that right side. So they're really like, it almost kind of like they're going to fall over if they don't.
Yeah. Did you have any thoughts about the color of their clothes?
It looks almost like Superman, like I kind of like you see the red cape and the blue arm, but the only thing that obviously throws it off is the green cape, but I'm really getting like a Superman vibe out of this person all of a sudden. So I don't know. What did you think about the colors?
So I was just thinking about the different elements for the different suits. And this suit is the suit of air, right? And so I'm looking at the coloring that they're wearing. They have green, which I would associate then with earth. They've got red that I'd associate with fire, and the blue I'd associate with water. And then the other air is this yellow color because, again, it's like kind of like a perfect balance of all of these elements as this person's moving on their journey. And it's kind of like, then I look at the little black and yellow thing. It almost looks like, maybe because of the light that's on it, a checkered flag. And if I think about, obviously this wasn't like drawn at a time when there was like car racing or anything like that, but the checkered flag, right, normally means like the last lap. And so like maybe this is like, okay, you're on the right path here, like just keep going.
Yeah, I can also say about the green, because if you think of green, it's the color of generation, the color of creation. You think of new life as green, and 3 represents that very well with the Trinity, because you have the masculine, the feminine, they come together to create in the world. On the physical plane, they come together as a guy and a girl to make a baby, but then also on the spiritual, they come together to create your own existence in your reality. So this all comes, you can look at it as a right and left brain working together to create. So that's also where we can get these colors from, because he has a base of that blue, and then it went to red, and now he's got the green. So now he's in the creation phase.
Well, and now if we're looking at, so if I'm saying that this light, the sun is illuminating everything, and in terms of light mixing, red, blue, and green, you mix those colors of light together and you get white light, which is the entire spectrum of all colors. So maybe there was also that kind of tie-in, potentially. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right, and then what did you think of the mountains in the background?
Well, mountains, to me, I always say that they'll represent some kind of obstacle, either in the past or the future, if you're not on them right away. So I think that he's kind of looking at if you think of them as obstacles in the past, it's something he's taken in. So he's looking at what he's been through. He's conscious of his past, and he's using it in that decision that he's making, or he's using it in the creation that he's doing. He's not blind to it. He doesn't have his back to it. He's looking right at it.
Yeah. I like that they're far away and that they're a totally different color. It makes it seem to me like the journey or path he's taking isn't going to necessarily be filled with a ton of struggles. There could be a struggle in the future, which I think obviously we all deal with some kind of struggle in our lives. But I think that it's one of those, it's not necessarily going to be part of this pathway, because the path has already been chosen. And it's lit up. He knows it's the right thing to do. And maybe if there is some kind of obstacle for him to overcome, at least it's being exposed and he knows what to expect.
Yeah. Very true.
Okay, any other thoughts on the different parts of this card before we move on?
I just kind of want to bring up the 3 leaves that I see. So there's a lot of 3s going on. So you have 3 rods or 3 wands. They each have a piece of like leaves coming out, 3 each, and then each of those has 3 leaves on it. So going back again, like I said, to the power of 3, it's just showing how it multiplies, then multiplies and multiplies, and it's literally showing you by growth, because it's the green part of the wand. So when you're creating out there, that's what you're doing. It's the power of 3. So yeah. Go ahead.
I actually love that you just pointed that out, because I did not even realize that all of the leaves on all of the wands are in groupings of 3.
Yeah.
Oh, with the exception of the one at the top on that his hand is on. There's a tiny little 4th leaf.
Yeah, I see that. That's cool.
And so what I like about that, do you know what I really like about that? Now adding all them up, the other 2 have 9 leaves, and then this one would have 10. right? Which is that completion of a cycle, and it's the moving on to something different.
Yeah, maybe that's why his hand's on there, because he's creating, but he's ready to go to 4 now because it's the next step. So he's looking forward, but he's also looking backwards. So by doing that, he's in the present moment, really.
And did you have any thoughts about the little sail ships, the sailboats in the water?
I mean, those, for me, that could represent either the path that he's taken, or maybe contemplating a future path that he might have to take, and it has to have to do with a journey over water. So maybe he has some emotional work that he has to do, or maybe he's done it and that's why it's all calm, and those ships are just kind of enjoying the calm oceans of that. So it could go either way. What'd you think?
Well, now that I'm looking at it, I love that there's 3 ships here that you can see, and they're kind of spread out the same way as the wands, 1 on the left side and then 2 on the right side. And yeah, and just looking at it, I would say that, again, maybe it's like the one ship on the left is it doesn't look like he's trying to catch up to the ones on the right. Maybe it's like that's the leadership and the other ones are following them. He's going out to kind of examine what's going on, and then bring back news. Who knows? But I really like that they're spread out that way, because it, again, makes me feel like it's pulling us then into that right-handed direction there.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the as above, so below principle that you learn in Hermetics, because you have the 3 wands positioned right next to him, but then way far away you have the 3 ships positioned in a similar manner.
Exactly. Okay, all right, now I think I'm done talking about it. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we move on to the different types of readings?
No.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about if this came up in a general reading. What would you say to someone?
I would say that it looks like this is the point where you have probably already made the decision, because we were talking about decisions last week. This looks like he already had made the decision because he's grabbing onto it. So he made his choice. So right now this person is living with their choice. They're either looking out at what has occurred because of their choice and they're happy, or they're not happy. But mostly this looks really happy. So I would say it's a good card. So and you could say to a person, a lot of times when you're contemplating a choice, you already know the answer. You just don't want to admit it to yourself. So this is just a confirmation that you made the right choice and you already know it.
Yeah. I said that this is, moving forward in life, kind of the end of an adventure, but the start of something new. Maybe it's like traveling or going somewhere. It's kind of leaving the past in the past and moving forward with your life. And like not looking back. And I love that there's no even like tilt of the head whatsoever there. It seems like all this person's hard work is paid off, and now they have this lit up pathway before them that kind of like the sky's the limit. They can do whatever they want. Sky's the limit, like air. Okay, now let's say this came up in a love reading. What would you say?
This could represent maybe looking back over a past relationship to try to figure out what went wrong. Maybe you're in a new relationship and you're having some of the same problems that you had. So it's good to look back where you've came, instead of going through that door. Maybe what's going on is this guy is about to walk toward us and he's just turning around to take one last look at where he's been to try to decide where he wants to go. Maybe he's just getting his bearings up here on the top of this mountain. So this can represent that. It also could represent the time in between relationships when you need to get your bearings and learn from that past relationship instead of just jumping into the next one. What do you think?
I said that looking at it, I thought that it was, if you're single, it's leaving the past relationships in the past. I think so many times, there's a quote from Sex and the City, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But I think it says something like, the only person who pays for what happened in your last relationship is the person in your next relationship. And I think that you just carry that baggage. And as someone kind of going through something like that kind of right now, it's unfortunate that I think that sometimes you carry those opinions that you've come, or the realizations you've come to, and you put these expectations on this new person because of your past relationship, without understanding that this is a totally different person. Things will be different. The relationship itself will be different. It's not going to be exactly the same. And the person that you were with the other person, that old significant other, is not the person you are now, because you've changed and grown and developed. So I'd say if you're single, it's kind of leaving that in the past and keep kind of like leaving your baggage at the door and just going in kind of like clean slate. And I'd say if you're in a relationship, this is an opportunity to kind of grow and expand into a new phase of the relationship. Maybe it's taking a romantic little trip together somewhere, or maybe it's, pursuing something a little bit more serious, or having conversations about where your future is, but it's going into a new direction and leaving behind kind of that initial or whatever phase you were in. Look at me doling out relationship advice. I doubt I'm the person to be doing that. But all right, let's talk about if this came up in a career reading. What would you say?
Why don't you go first?
Okay, I said that this could be, if this was a job, I could see this being like somebody who travels a lot for work, or maybe a travel agent, kind of helping to create different trips and experiences for people. I said that in a career situation, this could be the start of a new phase. This could be something new, something different, or it could kind of be that aha moment where you're like, oh, I finally understand what I'm supposed to do for this project or for that project, or I finally know what I want to do, period, like for a job. And it's just like taking that pathway. Now it's all laid out before you, and now you just have to have the courage to move off of this little stoop.
Yeah. I like that. I also like what you said about the relationship thing. I think that who better but you to give advice, because you've been there, so you could use your past knowledge. So that's great. But I was, while you were talking about that, I was also thinking this card also kind of looks like somebody who got to the top, like over the next mountain, and is kind of seeing what's in front of him. There's like a bounty, and like his ship has finally come in. The ships are here. We're saved. So in the context of a career, maybe this could represent the next big thing, the next big thing you've been working toward, whatever it is. And I mean, times like these are the times that, if you think that things are going to change, which they already have, and they're going to stay changed, maybe you could figure out a better way to support yourself, a way that you're more aligned with nature, and a way that you feel better about doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So this could definitely signal that, and this is the time to do it. Go out there and invent a new kind of toilet paper or something. Start making bidets, kill it out there.
Yep.
Or like a murder hornet vest. I don't know. Like, there's so many ways that you could like probably prosper in this new brave new world that we find ourselves in. So yeah, I think that's what that could represent. And if you are, say you're somebody who lost your job, this could represent not giving up and really trusting your instincts on what to do next. Sometimes things got to get worse before they get better, and sometimes they don't get better. You just got to make the best of your situation. So that could be this too.
And it's all a matter of perspective, right? If there's somebody who's always going to look at something like in a pessimistic way, everything is going to be negative to them. I know somebody like that. It was somebody that was my old roommate. It was like everything is like, woe is me. I shouldn't have done this. Of course this would happen to me. It's like that episode of The Simpsons. Do you remember with Frank Grimes? And it was like he goes to Homer's house for dinner, and they make lobsters, and then at the end he's like, and I can do whatever I want because I'm Homer Simpson, and he just is like always like everything bad always happens to him. I've had such a hard life. And it's like a lot of people have had hard lives. It's just a matter of looking at it and saying, I'm not going to let this define me. I'm choosing to be in a good place and have a good temperament and be positive and optimistic, because sometimes that's more than half the battle. And if you look at things in a positive way, sometimes positive things start to happen.
Yeah, and then sometimes when bad things happen, it's just the way things go, and it's what's going on. And the more you accept it, the more, or the less that you'll deny it, and the more you could, the quicker you could start to actually remedy the situation. So, it's you also got to remember the bad feelings and the negative feelings come up. It's okay to feel them. You don't want to push them down, let them out, and just express them in a positive way. Paint, create art, sing, make comedy. That's what we do. Make a podcast. That's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's something so important that we should also do is find humor in maybe even the negative. There's something so cathartic about finding a way to laugh.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're gonna die anyway, you might as well laugh about it. And you know,
Right.
if you're gonna, I was thinking this. I'm like, if I ever have to do like go out and do a protest or whatever, or go to one, I should like think of jokes to like tell to the police to try to make them laugh. Because if you can make them laugh, like how are they gonna beat you up if they're laughing at you? That'd be hilarious. Like hitting you with a stick as they're laughing. You know, like,
Yeah.
that'd be great if you could pull that off. But yeah, that's what it is, man. I think that's what humans have been doing for however long. The ones that get through are the ones that could make light of the situations and survive. That's a big part of it. You have to be positive, because if not, you think you could just give up. You know, you'll just give up.
Right. Okay, any final thoughts on this card before we move on?
Yeah, don't give up, everybody. Just laugh. But no, I think that's good. I think we're good with this card.
Yeah, I like this card. I feel like I feel such a connection to it, to the position of this person in their life. And again, maybe that's just because of where I am right now. Anywho, let's move on for the next part
Actually,
of the
one thing I did want, sorry, really quick to cut, not to cut you off, but if you see the 3 on the top of the card, right, and then you look down at the 3 wands, they're positioned to where it doesn't look like it's the same. You know, it looks like the 2 wands are over to the right. But again, it just goes back to your perspective, because if you were looking at this and you took like 3 steps to the right, it's possible they would all line up. So I think that's important to remember. To go again, maybe it's another message they're trying to give you. It's all about perspective. Maybe these rods are equally distant, but we just can't tell because the way we're looking at it. So it's always important to remember that.
Exactly. It's all a matter of perspective.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so for the next part of the podcast, we look at the same card but in a different deck. And for this part, Brandon gives a description of the card, and then we kind of talk our initial thoughts on it.
All right, we're talking about the Aleister Crowley Thoth deck, as we do every week, and this is the 3 of Wands. This one is named Virtue. This card, it's very simple. It's basically just an orange background. And right in the middle, we have 3 different wands with, it looks like flowers at the top, and they're yellow wands. And in the background, it looks like we have some kind of like star or maybe flower petals coming out of it, emanating out of it. And that's also orange, just a little bit darker orange with the highlighted. And then above the center wand with the flower on top, we have a circle with a dot. And then below it, we have the V.
Aries.
Yes. All right. And that's about it. If you want to check it out, go to Tarotbull2 on Instagram. TAROTBULL 2. So what did you think?
So for me, this flower looked like a tulip, which I think is really nice in terms of like for spring, April flowers, like you just sent me that meme. April showers bring May flowers.
That's right.
And I love that it's kind of on top of these wands. Last week I was those wands did not look like wands to me. They looked very like fat and like hard to hold on to and handle. And these to me look like scepters, almost like fairy scepters or something. Something maybe a nymph would have, like in the forest. And I love, like I said, the flowers on the top, and tulips are often used to promote like love and symbolize love, which I think is weird because the first thought I had when I first looked at this card is it reminded me so much of the 3 of swords, with the 3 swords in the heart, and it's raining.
And the Rider-Waite deck.
Yeah, that's exact. Like when I first, like, that's all I saw was like, instead of going through the heart, they're going through the star. And whereas that symbolized to me like heartbreak and maybe heartache, this maybe is like new life. You know, it looks like this star is kind of expanding out, and these are like helping or like dissecting it, but in a positive way.
Yeah, you can look at that because if you're thinking of 3, it's the number of creation. But if you look at cups, sometimes when you create, it's not always pleasant. Sometimes It is something that's going to be very emotional. But then when you're looking at the wands with the fire, it's a totally different creation process. And I think that's what they're symbolizing here. And I love that there's a 10-pointed star right in the middle of this. Yeah, it's really cool. Because then it makes it, 16, I guess, altogether for counting the emanations of the wands. Yeah, I don't know. It's a really positive card. If this came up in a reading for somebody, I would say that it looks like that you're creating or whatever you're doing looks like it's going well, or if you have an idea, put it into action, because this is what's going to happen if you line it up well, if you get everything lined up.
Okay, and what are your thoughts about the name of the card being Virtue?
I think that all these words are always so kind of like misleading to me.
Yes.
I don't really see that much of a correlation with virtue, other than everything just seems to be in alignment. So maybe that's what they're talking about. Maybe they're talking about that exact creative force, the trilogy, and that's what's virtuous, because when you're out there creating in alignment the correct way, it's a good virtue to have. I don't know, maybe that's a stretch, but what did you think?
Yeah, I was really confused about the word virtue, because it just made it seem like almost, I just wasn't getting that feeling from it. But looking at it now, I'm still not getting that feeling. But I'm thinking maybe you have the 10, you have the 3. Maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe there's just a purity there, and that is the virtue that they're talking about. The purity of the intersecting wands, the purity of the petals or the star. Because honestly, if you cut this in half, it would be perfect. It would be almost exactly the same on both sides. Going from the symbol up at the top, the little bullseye, to the V at the bottom. If you cut it right down the center there, it literally looks like the same.
Oh yeah, it's like a mirror image.
So maybe there was like a, because everyone says like patience is a virtue, but maybe it's like they've gotten everything all lined up to the point of, and being patient and having that self-control to be able to pursue the things that they want to do.
Yeah, it's that balance.
And it's like giving that direction of this is the correct thing. Correct in quotes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess virtuous would also be truthful. Maybe it has to do with true, and because in the meaning of the word true is right, it is also like balance. Could be that too. I think we like machine gunned it. We got some of the meaning in there at least. We're good.
I think so, yeah. Okay, I still think that we should put off our dive into astrology, because I was listening back and I agree that it's nice to do a little update of what we have going on each week and not to feel so rushed. But I do want our listeners to know that we are planning on doing a special additional episode, or at least 2, one of Brandon giving me a reading and one of me giving him a reading. And so you'll get to hear that sometime soon, which I think is really exciting. And then next week, we'll be talking about the 4 of Wands.
Yeah, the 4 of Wands. All right, everybody. I think what we're due, too, is because we have a couple patrons. So we'll put them up on the... I don't know if it's because of... Well, it's just at the Comedy LOL. There's a couple. I don't know if they're ours or what, but still, that's great. I mean, obviously, it's... But so I'll put them up, the readings up for them first. So if you want to get the readings right away, just go to our Patreon, and that you can do at comedylol.com/Patreon, or you just click on it on our page on the Comedy LOL, and you could donate to us a couple bucks every month, and it helps out. So and you can also support us by going to the Comedy LOL. There's an Amazon link to your shopping there, and that helps us out too. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we end this episode?
No, there's not, I don't think.
All right. Are you sure?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's not like you were thinking about it. You're like, maybe. 7-Eleven is an inside job. No. All right, everybody. If you, I think we did everything. Yeah, go to Comedy LOL, and until next weekend, or next week, stay terrible. Yeah, that was a bad one. That ending was weird. All right. Bye. Awkward. It was terrible.
Comedy LOL Podcast Network.